All right. Thanks everybody for coming. Today we're going to talk about marketing Bitcoin. It's a loaded topic. I'm sure every Bitcoiner has a lot to say about that. But let's hear today from our awesome panelists. We have a great panel for marketing Bitcoin from very diverse opinions. So let's get started. Welcome to the panel of Fomo is a product. My name is Vivian, and I'll be the moderator for this panel. So before we get started, let's have a warm welcome of our panelists. Give them a round of applause.
I don't see Michael Saylor here yet. Should we wait for him for 5 minutes?
I'm sure he will show up after his talk. Yeah, it's an important topic he's also interested in. Before we hop into the topics, let's hear from the panelists. Would you give a little bit of an intro of who you are, what you do in the space?
Sure. My name is Kristian. I'm a chief of propaganda at Brains. We're a mining tools provider. So we're the oldest mining pool. We have other software for Bitcoin miners.
I'm Samson. I'm the CEO of Jan3, and we make Aqua, and we also do some stuff with nation-state adoption.
I'm Sam, minus the sun part. I work at River. I head up marketing and content, and I've done a bunch of research that people might have seen going around.
Right. Well, thank you. And as the moderator, I'm Vivian, and I'm doing marketing, communication, operation for Bitcoin companies. And I'm also the host and producer of Live with Bitcoin podcast, where we focus on the personal transformations through the lens of Bitcoin. So let's dive in. Bitcoin marketing is a big topic. Let's kick things off by addressing the elephant in the room. Does Bitcoin need marketing? Or it's self-sustaining enough to just shine as is? Does Bitcoin need marketing, Kristian?
Everything is marketing. Everything is business. Everything is marketing. So yes, Bitcoin needs marketing, but we don't need like a centralized association of top influencers to work on it. The decentralized aspect works. Yeah.
How about you, Samson?
I would say so. Everything we do is helping to market Bitcoin in some way. And if you look at it as a product, if Bitcoin is a product, then the total addressable market is 8-point-something billion people. And the best way to reach them is a lot of different companies and groups reaching out in different ways. If you look at the ETFs, they're targeting their ads to the boomers and older people. So they're very muted in how they describe Bitcoin and how they present Bitcoin. So that's just one example. But yes, I think Bitcoin does need marketing.
Yeah, I would agree. It needs marketing. Definitely agree on we need a lot of different angles. I think the key part is also that we need to be careful about how we market it. And if you look at some of the early years of Bitcoin, which Samson is also well familiar with on how people marketed Bitcoin, like this is great to do cheap payments on chain. And a lot of people already knew then this is never going to scale globally. So marketing it to people in that way that you can do, like have that expectation on chain, that's where a lot of issues then arise and where people get marketed to in the wrong way. So we need a lot of marketing, but we do need sort of correct marketing. So on quote unquote, that's a little bit accurate.
Right. The title of the panel is called FOMO. FOMO is a product. FOMO, fear of missing out. I'm sure everyone has lots of experience in that. And I want to pick your brain because you work with different audience. You orange pill different audience. So Kristian, you work a lot. You work in the energy sector, which deals with a lot of the misconceptions, especially comes to Bitcoin energy. And when you are facing audience who are holding these beliefs and impressions, what do you do to try to get them become open-minded enough to adapt a new perspective of Bitcoin?
I don't have a good answer. It's about education, as I say. A lot of people have the misconceptions and the wrong idea about Bitcoin, the energy debate. But it's just through education how we solve it. I don't have an elevator pitch that I use every time. It's every situation is different. Every person needs a little bit different how I pitch it to him. So it's very case sensitive, I would say. But in general, it's about educating, and being helpful.
And Samson, you work with nation states, Bitcoin adoption. And when talking to governments and regulatory bodies, what do you do to market Bitcoin? Like, what do they FOMO on?
Well, like Kristian's saying, there's no one shot solution. It's really tailored to what they're interested in and what ways that Bitcoin can benefit them or their country. So we're more focused on what their problems are or what they want to achieve and how Bitcoin can fit into that. So I guess it's really dependent. Again, that's not a great answer to hear, but it is really customized. So let's say, as an example, if you're a country that has a lot of stranded energy or untapped energy, then we focus on accessing that with Bitcoin mining and using that to finance projects like building roads, schools, or just building more power generation so that they can bring more people onto the electrical grid. So it really is dependent on what they want and how Bitcoin facilitates that.
So you will both agree that when in your effort of orange peeling your audience is very much of a case-by-case scenario. There's no one-size-fits-all.
But the very important part, as Samson said, is like really understand what their incentives are, like what they are looking for to solve, and then you can tailor the education and make the pitch tailored to them.
And I think this is where sort of a lot of people who get into Bitcoin are really excited about it. They take a bit of a too eager approach where they immediately want to tell their story and be like, this is what I think it is and how it's going to help you. But for a lot of people, when you hear that, you're like, okay, but I'm not you. I don't have your experiences. I am interested for different reasons as we're raising. So I think that's like a common theme where it's much more about listening first and understanding like why are people interested in this thing in the first place or what might be an interesting area for them. And then jumping on that and capitalizing on it and presenting them with a really strong message or story or example that resonates with that person. And I think that's something that the Bitcoin space in general has been learning much more as it's been maturing. Like, how can we speak to different audiences and people that just, they're not going to be reading books or listening to podcasts, or they're not the person who is into this for privacy reasons, but what does resonate with them? And that's what we increasingly are starting to figure out, I think.
And my question to you is, you work with content and you work with communication, and I bet you talk to institutional players as well as retail investors. Do you feel like they care about different things, or they care about the same thing when it comes to Bitcoin?
I think you have a mix of it. Like I think you also see this with the ETFs, yeah, and some of that could again be marketing. Like, we position ourselves as the cool guys, but you do see some that are genuinely interested in seeing Bitcoin develop well in the long run and aren't just here to quickly grab some money and then are first out whenever it's not looking too good. So I think there's a good mix. I think in general with institutions, a lot more will be focused on the money. That's just generally, how the incentives play out. And a lot of people will have various reasons why they're interested in using it. So I'd say like it's definitely skewed in that kind of way. I don't know if you guys
the money is also the best marketing, right? When price is up, that's when people are more interested in Bitcoin. And it also applies to nation states too. Like, when it's down, nobody wants to talk. But when it's up, even not like 60, but even like 40, you can feel it warming up again. So the price is really the best marketing for Bitcoin.
Interesting. And now you mentioned the ETF. Let's ask some ETF questions. Who have saw some Bitcoin ads after ETF got approved? Show of hands. Yes. So have you checked it out? What do you think? What's your impression of these existing first few ETF ads?
I think they did a decent job at marketing at their target audience, which is just very different from I guess like a lot of the Bitcoiners that have already sort of been around and in the space. So I mean, like, I looked at it and was like, yeah, this is kind of what I would expect. And it wasn't too bad or cringe either. Just sort of like what you'd expect. So
No, to be fair, I thought they did better than we all expected. Because like some of the ads were shared by the hardcore Bitcoiners, saying like, hey, this is actually pretty cool. So that they did better than I would expect, to be honest.
To be honest, that's the impression I get, because one thing I picked up from these ads is that we as Bitcoin educators, we try to tell people what Bitcoin is. Like, we really try to educate them. Like, we go from the education angle, right? But all of these Bitcoin ETF ads, from my impression, is that they're not trying to explain what it is. They're just saying, this is a cool thing. This is the next cool thing. This is really interesting. So they're trying to create a sense of FOMO without actually explaining it. Do you think that's a good approach?
Of course, because you have like what the average ad is 30 seconds, right? You just need a hook. You just need to create a, hey, here's a Bitcoin and you want to know about it. Like, come talk to us, come ask questions. So creating the hook, that's the genius marketing. That's why price works, because it's just such a simple signal that tells the story. So you just need a very powerful hook. And so they did a great job, I would say.
And now we have the ETF approved, so there's gonna be a flood of hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps, pouring into marketing Bitcoin. How do you think that's gonna shift marketing Bitcoin or Bitcoin marketing in general, and how people perceive Bitcoin compared to previous cycles?
I remember one thing that if you don't have anything, so I worked at KPMG before I started working at Bitcoin, and they were very, very against any crypto and Bitcoin, and it was very difficult to talk to them. We needed them for some audits in our company, and then I think it was end of last year, KPMG published like hey, Bitcoin is actually, here's how it's ESG compliant and helping to save the planet. So the narrative is changing a lot. It's like the company I worked for that hated Bitcoin is now defending Bitcoin and showing how green the mining is. So it's mind-blowing. So we're going in a very good direction. We're completely with the beginnings. Like, there's a lot of work to be done. I still think the energy debate is the final boss of Bitcoin. Like, we need to educate. Like, that's the biggest hurdle that is preventing the more adoption. And so I think all those institutions having the ETF and having the traditional finance guys in the space will help it, because they're gonna pay for the KPMG audits and the KPMG research to show, hey, Bitcoin is good, Bitcoin is green, all that, so they can make money on the fees. So I think we're going in a great direction, and they'll do a lot of work for us. So yeah, hey, bankers will help us. I like it.
How about Samson and Sam? Have you noticed the interest from nation state picked up after ETF and institutions and retail investors?
Sure. I think, like, from a marketing perspective, to your point, yeah, there's a lot more money flowing in. I think that's gonna make Bitcoin more about money than it already is. Like, especially in the early stages, you have a whole area of people who are focused on privacy. You have lots of people who are interested in the payment side of things. And I think a lot of that money is gonna flood in for the investment side of things, for the money side of things. So in that sense, I think it's gonna become a bit more like that. While the other things continue to exist, they're not gonna disappear as a result. But there's been growing interests, I think, and more money being thrown at that to reach more people that previously might have kind of glanced over it, and now realize for the third time that they totally missed Bitcoin, but actually didn't miss it and could totally still get started today, and then not hit themselves in the head in another 4 years from now. So I think we're just going to keep seeing this repeat, and if the trend continues as it has been going, then more and more money gets thrown at this, more and more creators get into the space, more and more companies are able to invest in marketing, and it just becomes a stronger and stronger self-reinforcing cycle. So that's kind of what I've been seeing anyway.
So for nation states, I don't know if it's really done anything yet. It should, but generally I feel like they're lagging behind. They're not watching the markets as much as we are. I think we have to always understand where we sit in the grand scheme of things. We're on Twitter, we're following the ETFs and how much inflows they have, how much outflows GPTC has. And then you have the broader retail market that probably has no idea any of that stuff. And then the governments and the politicians, maybe some do, but by and large, they aren't following it that closely either, because they're more focused on other things. So we still have to make an effort. I think once we cross 100K or 0.1 M, we should start to get into that realm where they get interested in it, because they can no longer afford to not be interested in it. But we're still early, I would say, right now. Just going back earlier to the ads, I thought that I think the best one probably is Van Eck, and then maybe the Bitwise ad with the most interesting man. But I saw a lot were also conflating Bitcoin and crypto. And I don't know if that's on purpose, because they're trying to reach people interested in crypto and say, go and buy the Bitcoin ETF from us. Or if it's just they're unaware of the difference themselves. But I think there's a double-edged sword there, which is we'll see a lot of money come in to push Bitcoin, but they might be pushing it in the wrong way and sending the wrong message too.
My guess is like it's kind of like keyword stuffing. They're just throwing extra things in there. 4 years ago, they would have added the term blockchain, but now they don't really do that anymore. So yeah, I think it's partially that, to try to, and in a way, like if more ETFs would follow, then they can say like, look, we were already into crypto ETFs early. So I think that's the kind of angle they take with it. They don't see any drawbacks to doing it, even though they exist.
Well, I think there is a drawback, which is they'll get pounded on by Bitcoin maximalists in social media. So we'll call them out and say, that's not what you should be saying, and give them negative feedback. But I'm waiting for one of the ETFs to go full Bitcoin maxi in their messaging and marketing, because it starts to become a differentiation game at that point. And we did see Bitwise first do the proof of reserves and publish their address. And this is something that GBDC has refused to do for years, but they were the first to do it, and then they differentiate themselves. And now I think, who else? ARK is now showing their reserves. So my prediction is one of the ETFs is going to go full laser eye maxi and just no second best marketing.
And you mentioned the Bitcoin, not crypto. That's important. So in any of your line of work, or when you're trying to orange pill your audience, how do you make the distinction between Bitcoin and crypto?
I have it very easy because miners, so we cater only to Bitcoin miners, like they're orange pill as it gets. So my job is kind of easy. Like if they're Bitcoin mining, it's brutal game. Bitcoin mining is the most brutal business in the whole world. So if they're already in the worst possible business ever, they really understand why. They really understand Bitcoin. So my job in that sense is a little bit easier because they love Bitcoin. They just need more education about the operational efficiencies, etc. So in that regard, I have it very, very easy, I would say.
How about governments?
I'm very happy for it.
How about governments? I bet they don't make the distinction.
It's a mixed bag. I think some people do understand the distinction, but there's a lot of people that don't understand also. And then you have the problem of, like, there's a version of Jan 3 that's the shitcoin version, which is them going out to try to orange pill, not brown pill, the governments too, right? So they're going out there and trying to get the countries to adopt their shitcoin. And that's also fighting with us in our messaging and our mission too. So it's not just that they don't understand the difference, but there are actively other groups going to try and push their project to become legal tender in a country, which is just crazy. But they have the funds because they printed money in the thin air, so they can do that. And that's the competition, really.
Well, for River, it's relatively simple. We're Bitcoin only, and we show it by just focusing on Bitcoin. Like, we don't spend a lot of time separating Bitcoin from crypto, but rather we just spend the time building Bitcoin stuff, creating Bitcoin education, rather than always comparing it to the other things. So it's kind of like more like actions rather than words. And we find that in general, like, especially if we look at the past few years, initially people would ask a lot, like, when are you going to add all of these assets and things? But over time, that just kind of died down while the business has been growing super fast. So you just see naturally over time, people become less and less interested in having all that other stuff on board, and they just want something really solid. And we show that by just focusing on Bitcoin. And I think in general, that's also what you see on Bitcoin Twitter. Like, yeah, we like to poke fun at all the other chains and the weird things they're doing. But in general, we spend the vast majority of our time on Bitcoin and on trying to do the right thing. So that's going to continue, I think, and have its effect compounding over the years, because we're a bunch of patient guys when it comes to this. Like, it's just low time preference, and that carries out over the years.
And compounding is everything. And Bitcoin price is doing well lately. However, I want to ask you this. When we try to orange pill people, like either to your audience or everybody else trying to orange pill members in their community, how much should we emphasize on price? Like, do you think if we focus too much on the price and have people FOMO on the price, are we losing out on the bigger picture here? Because we all know that Bitcoin represents so much more than just the potential financial return that it brings.
I don't judge. My story is the same. I came for the greed state, for the revolution, really honestly. I just wanted to get rich and buy Lambos 7 years ago, really. So and it made me to go and study all these principles, and I'm staying for the revolution. So I'm really not judging people getting in and caring only about price if that helps to get.
But after buying how many Lambos?
Yeah, 0. I'm fucking short fiat as it gets.
I think price is very important, and we should not be ashamed of Bitcoin price and focusing on things like the technology and the freedom aspects, because that's not what reaches people first. It's always the price that reaches people first. And we should just embrace that. There's nothing wrong with Bitcoin number go up, and there's nothing wrong with talking about Omega candles and $1 million Bitcoin, because that's what draws in the crowd. You don't, like, if you look at kids' vitamins, they're not pills that you swallow. They're chewy gummy bears, right? And there's a reason for that, because it's palatable, right? You don't give a child a big vitamin and say, swallow this vitamin. You give them the gummy bear, and the price is the gummy bear. Let them have their gummy bear.
I love the metaphor. I do have my second thoughts on, like, how much do we want to promise people? I mean, we have high conviction that, when you say $1 million, it's like, yeah, that's going to happen.
But we're right.
Yeah. But from my perspective, it's like, how much do you promise them and what expectations do they attach to that? Because some people, when you say $1 million, they think like, so within a year or something. And if it's not going to happen, then I'm out just as quickly to go to this other coin that promises me 100x returns. So you, like, in a way, that's part of your question, I think, is like, do we also attract that kind of crowd who is just trying to get rich as quickly as possible, no matter what the risks and the trade-offs are? And yeah, you pull some of that in, and we are not responsible for how they interpret this and whether they think it's going to happen within X months. But it is a side effect that I think is important to be conscious of.
And to follow up on that, as marketers in Bitcoin, how much do you think we should leverage FOMO as a product? Like, FOMO is essentially fear-based marketing, right? Like, how much should we approach orange peeling through fear-based marketing? Do you have any alternatives where we are not doing enough fear-based marketing? What's your thought on this? Fear-based marketing in general and in Bitcoin?
I think, like, Bitcoin in general is very much a story of hope. And I think that's an angle a lot of people try to take towards it, is like, rather than, make people scared that they're making the wrong decisions, it's much more like you could be taking control of your life in a way and building up your wealth over time. And that gives people, people, like, especially people my age, they are, like, I see a lot of people around me who are kind of like nihilistic about the world because they've been told that, the world is going to go to shit anyway, and we're not going anywhere with global warming. So why would they bother building a future for themselves? But Bitcoin kind of, for a lot of those people, suddenly represents something like, hey, maybe there is some kind of hopeful future, and I can actually take control of my life and build something up like that. And I think sharing that message is far more powerful than, if you don't buy this, then you're going to fall behind and you'll just get wrecked by inflation and you need to get on this thing.
I agree with Sam, but the FOMO comes naturally, because once you understand Bitcoin, you do FOMO that you don't have enough Bitcoin. Yeah. It's inevitable. You can't separate the two things. Once you understand it and what it can bring and where it's going, you will FOMO eventually, even if you're an OG.
But it's a more positive kind of FOMO thing. Yeah, that's not the, like, I'm gonna die if I don't buy this thing. It's more like, damn, I don't have enough. I love this thing.
Exactly. But I don't think anyone's actively going out to do FOMO, fear marketing, and saying, you don't have Bitcoin, you're going to die. Or it's actually the opposite. It's the mainstream media saying, if everyone gets Bitcoin, we're all going to die. There's a guy on Chinese TV saying that. But that was great. But yeah, I guess the point is, we don't need to promise them anything, but everything points towards Bitcoin consuming the entire legacy financial system. So we might say 1 million Bitcoin, but the truth is it's irrelevant. You're going to just denominate everything in sats, and maybe even have a smaller denomination in the future, because it'll just absorb all value. So that's what, at least I'm trying to get across when I talk about 1M Bitcoin. It's that it's going to consume everything. And I think for most people, we do believe in hyper-Bitcoinization, but a lot of us don't want to say 1 million because it's tacky. But I'm okay with saying it. I don't mind being tacky.
And but at the same time, we see crypto investors or crypto affiliates, they are adapting FOMO as a major tactic. And if a YouTuber on shitcoins, they're talking, they have 50,000 views on one video, they must be doing something right. So if we as marketers in Bitcoin, what can we do? What can we learn from them potentially to steal their thunder and attract more attention to Bitcoin instead of crypto?
Well, I think one of the things is they always will talk about how their thing is going to go to the moon. So the way we take back that narrative is just say Bitcoin is going to the moon. And it is. If you look at Bitcoin right now, it's outperforming all those shitcoins. And that's not normal in, the whole crypto ecosystem. Normally those things pump more, but Bitcoin is outstripping most of them in this bull run. I think some of them are coming back up now, but Bitcoin has potential to outstrip all of them in terms of gains. And we should not be afraid to own that. Like, it's just, Bitcoiners are humble. Maybe they should practice intermittent staying humble. But, if we don't talk about Bitcoin's potential, then they will talk about their shitcoin potential, and that harms more people in the end. So it's a balance, I would say. We have to take advantage of Bitcoin's inevitable price rise and own it. It's going to happen.
And Samson, what's your latest prediction of Bitcoin price? When 1 million?
I think it's going to be very soon. So there's a human tendency that if you predict something or you expect something that happens, I don't know, next month, and it doesn't happen next month, you push it out to 5 or 10 years later. It's just cognitively more comfortable because cognitively in 5 to 10 years, it should happen. But the reality is if something is going to happen inevitably at a certain time and you miss that mark, like your own personal prediction or someone else's prediction, it still probably is going to happen, but maybe just a few weeks out. So I think we'll still see Omega candles very, very soon, not 5 years later. And it's not 1 million Bitcoin in 5-10 years, but it's this year. And that's scary, but the reality is it's going to happen. Like, let's say we don't know when the halving is going to happen, but we do know the halving is going to happen. But let's just say, I don't know, Kristian, you predicted it was going to be March 15th, and it wasn't March 15th. It's actually April 20th. But the cop-out would be to say, yeah, the halving is going to come in 3 years. But no, it's actually, you're close, but not quite right. But it's still going to be very soon.
All right. Well, and on that positive note, very, very soon, Bitcoin 1 million. We're going to be very excited for that. And thanks a lot for our amazing panelists from we're getting first-hand insights from marketers, the very best marketers in this industry, orange pilling the world. So how do we stay close to your work, and any final remarks? Sam?
You can follow me on Twitter. I'm guessing we're all going to talk about our Twitter, at SD Wouters. X. I can't get over that. I'm sorry. What am I excited about? What's the question?
Any final remarks on how to stay close to your work?
Stay close to it there. And I think final remarks, I think we see a general theme here of let's be somewhat nuanced about stuff, but also not shy away from what we believe is going to happen and bring a story of hope. So I'd say that really just wraps it up.
Okay. You can find me on Twitter at Excellion, EXTELLION, or Jan3Com. And closing remarks is just brace yourselves for what's to come.
Stay humble and study Bitcoin. Go to brains.com/books. I'm not shilling commercial product. You can download them for free. And they're also in audiobooks on YouTube and Spotify. So stay humble and study Bitcoin.
And I'm BTC Viv on Twitter. And my podcast is called Live with Bitcoin, where we focus on the human side of Bitcoin. So I guess that concludes our panel today. Thank you so much for the panelists. And let's market Bitcoin going to the moon. Thank you so much.